name is Jeremy Kahn, and this video is about my CLI-based workflow for maximum productivity. If you'd like to check me out on GitHub, I'm right here at Jeremy C. Kahn, as well as most places on the internet. But let's get right into it. So a couple things I'm going to go over. This is going to be a mostly high-level video. I could go into great depth about all these tools, but that would be a very long and meandering video. So this is going to be just the high-level stuff. And if you'd like to see more videos about anything that I'm going over, just drop a comment and I will try and make some content for you. But in the meantime, I want to focus on this little function here that I've got in my bash RC file, or my bash profile rather. And what this is doing, and I'm going to get into this and explain it, but it's using Tmux to create a project session with Neovim, Lazygit, and Mprocs. And if those are all foreign terms for you, don't worry. This video is going to be an explainer about how this all works. But this is sort of our jumping off point. So first off, let's run this project. So I'm primarily a front-end web UI engineer, and I work a lot with JavaScript, so that's what my workflow is mainly based around, but there's no reason that you could adapt something very similar for your own purposes. So let's go to my terminal. I like to work in the terminal for everything. That's just how it's just what works for me, and everyone's different. Some people like graphical IDEs, and some people like living in 1987. I am the former. But I'm going to use a project of mine called Farmman to demo this. But what I do when I'm starting a work session is that I type JS project session and I hit enter. And it does a couple of things. So this green bar down here is Neovim, and this is basically it's a terminal multiplexer. And what that essentially means is that you can have any number of terminal sessions being managed in the background, and you can detach them with a keyboard combo. So for instance, I have it mapped to Control B and then D, and then it is detached, and I can go do something else. But then I can reattach it with Tmux A, and I'm back where I left off. And I can have any number of these things. I can switch between them. So for instance, I've got a session for my project called Farmhand, but if I wanted to go into a different project, I just attach it. I'd go into a different directory, another project of mine called Shifty, and then I'd create a new project session, which is just a Tmux session, and that will boot up Shifty. And to show you how what I mean by this is if I do Control B and then S, this shows me my different sessions. So I can easily manage different projects at one time. I do this all the time at work because I work in a bunch of different repos, and I want my tools available for me in every single terminal that I'm working in. But let's pop back to Farmhand to show off some of this stuff. So I use Neovim, which is a fork of Vim. I love it. Some people don't. You do you. But to me, it is the best way to use Vim. It's got a bunch of sane defaults, and it's got the best support for plugins, which I use quite heavily. Lots of people like to use Vim in a very pure, minimalistic way, and that's awesome. But I like to turn my Vim into a bit of an IDE of sorts. It just helps me get work done faster, and it works better for me. So I could go on for hours about my dot files, but I'm just going to show you the two that I use most. So this is a JavaScript project, and I like this one plugin called coc.nvim, and also first off, here's Neovim. Check it out. I recommend it. And here is coc.nvim. I'm not sure if it's pronounced coc.nvim or coc. I just spell it out because it sounds less ridiculous in meetings, but it's great no matter what it's called. Again, it's a very complex tool. It basically turns Vim. It works for both Vim and Neovim, and it basically turns whichever variant you're using into a sort of terminal-based Visual Studio Code. So if you want the power that comes with Visual Studio Code, you can have that in Vim. So for instance, if I go to, let's check out my reducers files. This one looks good. So I can see what, so this is JavaScript, so it's going to have only so much, it's going to have limited type functionality. But what I could do is I can see, I can hit, I've got a key binding for, I think it is Shift K, and that'll tell me what this, what type this value is. It does its best to infer it for JavaScript. It's much better for TypeScript because it has to be, because all the types are statically typed. So the language server can tell you exactly what everything is. And there's a couple of cool things in here. So it doesn't just tell you types, but it can help you format your code. So if I did this and did some weird thing, I can just do a keyboard combo, which I've got mapped to leader B, and it formats it for me. So I often like to just slam down a bunch of really ugly code that looks unreadable, and then hit leader B, and it is readable and perfect. And it's just a great way to work. I recently learned a cool thing called code actions. It basically lets you do certain macros essentially to your code. So what I mean by that is, for instance, let me go to my utils directory here. This is a giant file that I'm in the process of cleaning up, but let's go down here. So if I wanted to, let's say I want to take this function and I wanted to extract it into a new file. I've got a keyboard combo mapped to a key mapping for G dot, and now we've got this little menu here. You can do a couple of things, and let's say we wanted to move this function to a different file, so you can use it here and elsewhere. Just hit 3. Yes, I want to confirm that. And I forgot what I called that. Let me take a quick look. I'll save all this. I'm going to cheat a second, go over to Lazygit. Okay, see, it's purchasable item map, and we can just go here. This is FZF that I'm using to find my files, which is very powerful. And here it is. It's the exported function, and we can see that it was automatically linked up in the imports by the code action. So that's great for refactoring and just automating a ton of your work. COC.nvim has just a ton of functions. It's a plugin with plugins unto itself. There's things for a file explorer, all sorts of language support. I depend on the TypeScript server, which also serves JavaScript for the things that you're seeing here. But it's great, and it has really changed how I use Vim, and I couldn't recommend it enough. However, because this is JavaScript and not TypeScript, a lot of the types aren't perfect. So if this is TypeScript instead of JavaScript, I could do gr, and I could see all, and this is coc.nvim, I could see all of the places where this purchasable item map function is being used. It's actually an array. But anyways, there may be references to this in the code base that this isn't picking up because it's dynamic code and it's not typed. If this is TypeScript, it would have all the references and you can easily get around to them. But for JavaScript projects, I like to use a different plugin in combination with coc.nvim. It's called AnyJump, and I have it mapped to leader J. And this will tell me where everything, it's more of a plain text mapping, but it also does some, it tells you, it can infer between definitions and references. I believe it uses ripgrep behind the scenes to sort of figure out some semantic values here. But this is, in practice, more reliable for JavaScript projects than coc.nvim because it doesn't require complete type definitions. It relies more on static analysis. And it's great. And you basically you can jump around to it. So the one over here, any jump again, could go back to the definition, and there it is. So I use this a lot because it helps me get around massive code bases that I'm unfamiliar with really, really quickly, and makes me look like I know what I'm really doing, even though I often don't. But living the illusion is what's gotten me this far. Anyways, so that's what I wanted to show you with Neovim. Next I want to show you Lazygit. So Lazygit is a Git TUI, which is a terminal user interface, somewhere between a CLI and a GUI. I love it. I used to use another Git TUI called TIG, which is Git spelled backwards, but this is just gone so far beyond what TIG ever could be. and I'm really glad I moved over to it. But basically, you've got these different panes here. This is your current working working state, whatever it's called. Then down here, you've got your different branches, your remotes, and your different tags, and you can check out all of them at will. And down here, you've got in this pane here, you've got your commits and your reflog if you need to go back in time. And it just shows you all of the diffs for every single commit that you've done, and you can check them out, and it's great. It also has really great stash functionality. So if you don't know git stash, it's basically a way of saving your current working state without making a commit. You don't push it to a remote. It's all local, but I often want to just try something out and see if it worked. And then I often get into a bad state, and I need to get back to where I was. Atomic commits make that really, really easy to do. But stashing also is great. So you can just apply any of these stashes. So let's just take this latest one that I was working on. Oh, and I actually had a conflict. That's too bad. I'm just going to delete that by hitting Shift D, because this is kind of getting off track. And you can just nuke the working tree, get back to a clean state. I do that all the time. Like Vim, if you're familiar with that, this has a bit of a learning curve. And like Vim, it is absolutely worth it. But if you ever get lost in Lazygit, you can just hit the question mark key, and it'll show you everything that you can do. And you can just go to these, and I don't want to actually run any of these things, but you just hit enter, and it'll run that highlighted command. So that's Lazygit, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Even if you don't want to check out the other tools in this video, this one will make your life infinitely easier. And on to Mprocs. So Mprocs is a much newer tool. You can sort of think of it as a lighter weight version of Tmux. So Tmux is great because it lets you run different terminal sessions and detach them and have different these quote unquote sessions you can switch in and out of. And you can see from this green bar at the bottom that I'm using that currently. Mprocs is like a subset of that and a simpler UI. And I like to think that Tmux is to Vim what Mprocs is to Nano. You've got basically a manual how to use it down at the bottom, and it's just a lot simpler to use, and you can use them simultaneously as I am here. So what I've got is I like to run my tests, so I can just hit Control A to get in here, and I can just run all my tests. It's going to bog down my CPU, so I'm going to stop running that. And you can I've got my web server running here. So this is just a great way of firing up your tests, firing up your web server, firing up your development environment, firing up a Git client, and just having it all at just a few button presses away. The author of Mprocs recently released, I think it was 0.4, which added a couple of really cool features. Chief among them is you can actually add a new process. So if I wanted to add, HTOP or something, you can see that it's running here, and it works. You could even add Neovim, which would be really impractical to do here, but it does work. And then you can just delete it, or maybe you stop it. Well, I think there's some way to get rid of the process. I forgot what the actual keyboard combo is. But in any case, you can flip in and out of them really easily. So bringing it all back together here, go back to my GitHub here. So this is coc.nvim, check it out. This is AnyJump, check it out. Lazygit, light of my life. And Mprocs, which we just went over. This one's the least mature project, but it's still very, very usable. And I definitely recommend checking out Mprocs. I'm a big fan already. And here's Tmux. The thing that we've been in this entire time, the thing that sort of is the backbone of my working project session. But going back to the beginning here, oops. So again, what this is all doing, now that we've seen all of what this is, this JS project session bash function, it creates one session for just my terminal at terminal 0. And it creates a terminal for Neovim, and then it reuses my most recently saved session file. And I've got one for Lazygit that just fires up Lazygit. And I've got one for Mprocs, which is sort of representing my npm scripts. And basically, what's going on here is that you can fire up Mprocs with an arbitrary number of arguments that are just strings that are commands to run. So in the first terminal, I want to do npm start to run my development server. And the second one, I want to run npm test. And to show you what that looks like again, npm start, npm test. And then it just attaches the session. But that is an overview of the tools that I use to get a ton of work done super quickly in the terminal. I hope you'll check it out or adapt it to your use case. But this is it's made coding much more fun for me, and I hope that it does the same for you. Thanks for watching my video. Have a great day.